manna for me is, if we think we have an enemy out there, the people ought to help decide through their members of Congress. There should be a vote on it and a declaration of war made, and know where it's to be and when it's going to end. Bill said it's time to quit, time to get those troops out of there and stop our loss of life. But he didn't go far enough. What he said was just back off, keep the bombers over there, and have special forces there. And actually, he said Pakistan was much more important than Afghanistan. Well, I think America is a lot more important than all three of those countries over there. In the recent weeks, we have read about the bombings in Pakistan. And it's usually done with no great danger to us. They're done by predators, drones. And they go over and they drop bombs and kill people. And sometimes they kill, a devout enemy of ours, and sometimes, most likely, it'll kill others. But, it isn't even the military that sends the drones. This is how much out of control it is. It's the CIA that controls this. And the CIA, and I'll get into this a little later, it's more secretive than the Federal Reserve. So we don't even know, as members of Congress, what the CIA does. There was a recent publication that came out that said over the past several decades, we have attempted to assassinate 50 leaders of different countries. And most of the time they were democratically elected. I mean, our pretense that we're over there to promote democracy is just not true. Some may believe it, and some may wish they could do it. But the truth is if the democratic elections occur and they're not our guy, that election doesn't stand. So you can be assured that Karzai is going to win. There's no way that Karzai is not going to win the election. But this is perpetual, the involvement. It goes back to '53 when they had an elected leader in Iran. And we went in and with the CIA got rid of most of that. Or actually didn't kill him, but got him out of power. And they do remember things like that. We would remember things like that. But our problem is when we get ourselves into trouble, we as Americans tend to forget. But the people in the Middle East, they never forget. They have long memories, we have too short of memories, and we don't look into what really causes our problems. But if we had still some disagreements on when we should be involved and what we should do, I am absolutely convinced that the foreign policy of non-intervention and minding our own business and bringing our troops home, we're to win that argument. Not so much that I'm going to give a grand speech on the House floor and convert everybody. It's not likely to happen. But guess what? They're going to run out of money. They've run out of money already, and we're barely continuing. So we're expanding the wars in the welfare state. We're running up these deficits, 180 billion a month, $2 trillion this year. We resort to borrowing from our arch enemy, China, and then we print money, and we're on the verge of real problems. Just this week, I was watching the news channel, and the commentator was there, and they said, this was very serious. It had nothing to do with politics. He said, all right, tell me where you're investing these days. He said, well, the West is having some problems, and this country has this and that, and we haven't quite recovered. He says, I'm looking to put my investments in China and Vietnam. Now, isn't that amazing? Here, in my lifetime, we were killing each other, in undeclared wars. And one of the disasters in my lifetime was, of course, the 60,000 men we lost, our men, and the millions that were killed by the Americans and the French. And we were going to teach them how to live like us and be westernized. And all those bombs and all that killing didn't do any good. We finally left, the communists took over, and there was violence and there were problems, no doubt. But lo and behold, our ideas were stronger than the ideas of communism. Communism in those years failed. And that's why the Soviet system collapsed. And the Chinese changed their ways. And now we do trade and invest and go to Vietnam. So we have won so much more in peace and trade than we ever could or ever did with the use of violence. One of the most serious policy changes that was made in the last administration, if you're interested in foreign policy, has been the Bush Doctrine. And the Bush Doctrine basically says that we have an obligation to start wars if they're necessary in our own self-interest. Well, I don't buy into that. I mean, that's not what America is all about. We don't start wars. And it's a fancier word. It's not called aggression. It is aggression, but it's not called that. It's called either preemptive or preventive war. You have a war to prevent war. It makes no sense whatsoever, but that has been the doctrine. So whether it's Republican or Democrat, we went in as Republicans into Iraq, and now we're into Afghanistan wholesale, plus Pakistan, plus the possibility of going into Iran. I mean, we're not backing off from Iran. When we go back next week, shortly thereafter, I assume they will bring up a resolution that went through our Foreign Affairs Committee, and that is to extend and amplify the boycott and blockade on Iran. Guess what they want to stop? We're not allowed to trade with them right now, which is exactly the opposite of what I want to do. I wanted to trade with Vietnam, not fight with them, and I certainly would like to see us trade with Cuba by now. We ought to do that. The Iranians are our arch enemies, and they have a bunch of bad people over there, but until we're perfect, I'm not going to lecture anybody. I think if we want to change people, we should set a good example. But we have nuclear subs around there. The Russians have nuclear weapons. The Pakistanis have nuclear weapons. The Israelis have nuclear weapons. The Indians have nuclear weapons. And the only thing that they respect around the world is if you have a nuclear weapon. So wouldn't it make sense for maybe the Iranians to want a nuclear weapon, even though up until this very date that the United Nations inspectors have not shown where they are actually working on and could have a nuclear bomb in the next 3 years. So it's not like that's all they're living for. And they have abided by the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And yet here we are trying to provoke trouble with them. So we're going to put a boycott on. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to prevent gasoline from being imported into Iran. Now the theory for this is that it's going to make the Iranian people madder than the devil. Which I agree. But they say what's going to happen when the Iranian people get mad, when we put a boycott on them and try to squeeze them, they're going to get mad at the Ayatollah and throw the Ayatollah out. It's crazy because what it does is exactly the opposite. When outsiders come in and interfere, people come together. You neutralize the dissidents if you go and show that the dissidents are on our side and we want to do that. But just think of a country that we run around panicked over and they can't even make gasoline. They don't have a refinery. They're depending on imports for gasoline. And yet our foreign policy is driven by that narrow-mindedness. And yet, I think the founders had it right. They gave us strong advice. Mind our own business. Non-entangling alliance. Don't get involved in the internal affairs of other nations. Trade with people. I think this country and the whole world would be a lot better off if we followed that advice. We could save a lot of money by changing our foreign policy, which we must do. We must, not only do I think we should change our policy to be safer and have a stronger defense of our country, but for financial reasons. This week they announced that Social Security recipients will not get a cost of living increase. They claim there's not that much inflation, which is a lie, because there's a lot of inflation out there if you have to pay a doctor's bill or buy food. But anyway, they say it's not, and that's not the most crucial thing. If we were really tightening our belt, I can understand that we could say no cost of living increase, but don't you think it should apply to the government first? Yeah. They're not doing that. At the same time, they don't hesitate for a minute to increase these military expenditures. So they nickel and dime things like Social Security increases, and they're not dealing with